Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Ride of Your Life. I don't know why I was so excited to say that. It was just a whole body movement. I'm here today with the lovely Lillie, Duke of Blonde.
Hello.
From Instagram and Life. And Duke of Blonde is an interesting name, actually. How did you come up with that?
I'm afraid I can't take credit for it. It was actually Sean, Be Your Own Hero. We were in the car one day and we were just kind of firing out different names because we were wondering how, where's
really
it going to go, and
name.
Came up with Duke of Blonde. So thank you for that.
But yeah, we are here with the amazing Duke of Blonde, and I just, you're such a staple on Instagram in the British community for women riders and riders alike.
Thank you.
You have a massive role in Slow Boys as well, which we'll get on to. So you do the admin, I believe, for Slow Boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it's really good to see women that have careers in the bike world and how, people, their passion has expanded into a lifestyle for them. And yeah, I just think it'd be great to open the floor to you for you to explain a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
So I started biking about 4 years ago in 2017, but I've always been around bikes, from family friends to my mum actually had a sort of small bike when she was in college, but family friends, ex-boyfriends, boyfriend has had sort of bikes as well, so I've always been around them, and I just thought one day I actually really enjoy this and I don't understand why I haven't done it for myself yet, so I did, and back in 2017, best decision kind of I ever made for myself. I was in a very low place, sort of confidence wise, and it's really helped with that, but apart from biking, I am a PA, so I have a very kind of static desk job, so I think the biking community and being part of the biking scene kind of really complements that in a way.
It's your bells and whistles.
It's my bells and whistles, yeah, and it enables me to have great evenings and great weekends away from the office and the desk, which is nice.
I guess what would be interesting is, what does it mean to you to be a rider, and why was that such a big move for you? Was it a huge move for you? Was it a huge life change for you?
It was in a way, because I was so I don't have I don't drive a car. I don't have a driver's license, so I was very dependent on public transport, on other people giving me lifts, etc. What I could do at the weekends would be dictated on if I could get to them or not. See friends or whatever, see family. So yeah, it really did. It had a big. It was a massive change, just being able to have that freedom that I had never had before without having to rely on public transport.
What made you choose instead of a car? Because a car's quite a generic option to go down.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you expect everyone to be a driver. What made you decide, you know what, I'm just going to completely go against the grain and just get a bike?
To be honest, I think it was first and foremost, I think, was living in London, because it's really hard to find parking in London, and things like congestion charges and stuff. It just, the price of it all adds up a lot. So I didn't even cross my mind, to be honest, to get my driver's license and get a car. And I just thought, you know what, I really want to have a bike, and I'm one of those types of people. I mean, I've had sort of quite a few major hobbies in my life. I was a dancer and a dance teacher.
Oh, wow.
I taught a Brazilian partner dance called forró for about 6 years, something like that. Quite a long
Explains why
time.
I keep telling everyone you're really elegant. Because when I met you, you had a lot of grace and elegance. And I know my mum said that I was a dancer as well, a dancer and a model. So my mum said that I learnt a lot through that. So yeah, I think that's where you get your elegance
possibly
from.
Yeah. So I did that for a while, and I really kind of threw myself into it, and then I also practiced Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
For sort of 2 or 3 years, something like that, and then ultimately I decided to kind of carry on with biking, and I still dance when I can. I mean, not at the moment with COVID and everything, because obviously it's very close, but I'm one of these people that sort of, it's either a go hard or go home, and I thought, I want a bike, I'm going to do it, and eventually I want to do my big bike license, get a bike, I want to tour, I'd like to go on track. I had all these kind of aspirations, and I just thought, this is for me, and I'm going to give it my best shot, and sort of that was 4 years ago, and here we are now.
When you think of it in terms like that, it's such a small decision, but also such a big decision.
Definitely.
It's quite a juxtaposition of what it is.
Yeah.
I look at your account and I found you through Ruby, obviously, and seeing that you do tours and you actually do those things alone.
Yeah.
You have that confidence, because going from not having a car license and, you know, being dependent on other people to suddenly, you know, driving around doing tours on your bike. You had a MT, I believe, MT-09.
So I actually started off with an MT-125 that I had for just over a year, and then I did my big bike license, and I got an MT-09. Yeah, and now I had that for a couple of years, and now obviously I've just moved on to the Super Duke.
Duke of Blonde,
Duke
Super
of Blonde.
Duke.
Yeah, there we go.
It's just very interesting that you've encompassed your life in such a way, and you know, people think, okay, this is a hobby, I'm a hobbyist, but it's also really interesting to talk to somebody that has it does surround a lot of areas of your life, from what I can see.
Absolutely, yeah.
It influences a lot. What would you say is your highlight of your experience and riding? What would you say is, you know, from something you didn't expect to happen through riding?
That's a really good question. I think there have been a lot of highlights for me, which is why I've been so kind of passionate about making it such a big part of my life, because it's brought me a lot of joy at the end of the day. And, you know, highlights are, you know, whether it's just sitting with a couple of, you know, really, really close girlfriends on their bikes, you know, down at the coast, having a beer, having an ice cream, in the sunset, to taking myself around Scotland and seeing some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen. It's just very, very empowering. I felt very empowered being on my bike and doing all those things solo. I mean, I don't have a partner, you know, I have some very, very good friends that have bikes, but sometimes you just want to kind of do those things and experience those things for yourself without
really scary
any kind of outside influences, really.
Yeah, so I love the thought process of touring. I am so for it and so want to go, but I don't know if this is a self-limiting belief, but I'm scared to do it. I don't know if something will happen, if, you know, if somebody's around me, if I should go with a group. You know, it's kind of like the stigma behind women traveling alone.
Yeah.
And when I read on your post that you were going to do Wales, I was thinking, wow, she's going to go do that on her own. No, surely not. She could be with a group of people. But it's just, how did you go about deciding this is a good decision for me to do on my own?
It was actually quite a spontaneous thing. So I find that I'm quite spontaneous with sort of making decisions, but when I make a decision, I stick with it and I make it work no matter what the cost in some ways. Sometimes that's a bit kind of detrimental, but sometimes it ends up being really, really good. Yeah, exactly. And I'd seen, I mean, in terms of Scotland, obviously I did the whole North Coast 500, and I also went on to Skye, and then this was from London, so I did something ridiculous, like almost 3,000 miles in kind of 2 weeks.
Which bike was this on?
This was on the 09.
Really?
Yeah. So
did you face any problems with it?
Absolutely none. It
really?
Was amazing.
All
those miles, I had not one issue, and I was really surprised because I'd read on sort of different forums, on different people's experiences, that, you know, the roads up there, they're very, very single track. Some of them are very gravelly. You will probably get a puncture. It's very, very unusual if you don't get a puncture. You know, I don't know, stone in the radiator, or something will happen with the bike. You'll run out of petrol or whatever. I'd heard all those things, but I bought myself a puncture repair kit, and I sort of watched loads of YouTube videos on very, very sort of minimal maintenance you have to do to keep your bike going, or at least to get it somewhere where I can get it fixed. But I had no issues, and that's why I was kind of a bit sad to also part with it when I bought the 1290, because I said, you know, this bike has really done me well. It's an amazing bike.
That many miles, not a problem. And I have to say props to you for getting yourself a puncture repair kit and being ready to get down, because I honestly wouldn't even know where to start.
No. Well, I didn't either. I'm not mechanical in the slightest, and I thought the least I need to teach myself if I'm going on a tour is how to fix a puncture on my own bike.
I would have relied on my phone and been like, somebody help me.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, you get into the sort of the literally in the middle of nowhere in Scotland. You don't even have phone signals sometimes, so you really have to make sure that you can get it working.
I know you're spontaneous, but how did you decide, and how did you go about like planning that? And where did you stay? And
so I love Scotland. I absolutely love it. Any opportunity to go up there is always an opportunity well taken for me. And I'd obviously been reading about and seen videos of the North Coast 500, and I just thought, I really, really want to do that, and I'm going to do that. So I planned my overnight stays, and I did it through Airbnb. I was going to camp. I was thinking about camping because you can wild camp up in Scotland in some places, but I didn't want to take it sort of all on my bike, and I thought just for the first time for something that I'm doing alone, I'd much rather have a comfy bed and a shower at the end of every night that I can just kind of have a good night's sleep and then tackle whatever it might throw the next day. Obviously you're in Scotland, it's not guaranteed sunshine either, so I thought, you know, if I was really sopping wet riding in the rain all day, you know, a bit miserable, I'd much rather have a comfy place. So I did it via Airbnb, and I basically just planned my kind of routes that I was going to sleep at, and then I had an idea of a route that I wanted to take but to be honest, on the coastal roads up in Scotland, there's only one road, really one kind of main road that you can take all the way around, but I didn't really plan. I just sort of saw a couple of points that I really, really wanted to visit, and like John O'Groats, like, you know, sort of things like that. And then I just went. I kind of started every morning with a good breakfast and a cup of tea, and I thought, right, I have to end up here tonight, but how I get there is totally, you know, up to me. If I see a nice road that looks really interesting, then I'll take it, and that's also one of the nice things about travelling alone, because you don't have to take into consideration what anyone else wants to do. And if you want to stop for a photo on the side of the road, you can. Or,
who'd you ask to take the picture?
Well, I had some really, really innovative. I sort of strapped my phone to a couple of trees and sort of lampposts and stuff. And, you know, you sort of have to act a bit, you know, you have to act a bit casual when kind of cars go past. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not taking a picture. But yeah, we made it work.
You and your bike.
Yeah.
It's like a couple there.
That's it.
Match made in heaven. I can't. I've only done one thing ever solo, and that was through Costa Rica, and it wasn't really completely solo. I went with a charity.
Yes, I did something very similar in Tanzania, actually.
Wow, yeah, you mentioned that actually. I do remember briefly speaking to you about that.
Yeah.
But it was, I think the relief for me was knowing that if something happened to me, people were there at the end of the day to know I've gone missing. Or I loved being alone. I have to say I loved that more than I thought I would have loved it. And the freedom I felt, the ability to clear my head, because I was on a push bike then and I was cycling through. But when I do think about my spontaneity, how I would go about, because it is a dream to do the Scottish 500. I've actually been saying to everyone, I'm going to do it next year. That's my goal. But I would like to do it with a group of people. I still can't fathom how you've literally, I could literally spend this whole hour and a half talking about how you've done that and why you did that, and, you know, how do you strap your phone to a tree? I have to say that I have been in those situations where I want a picture and I've like lent it up against a log.
That's
used
it.
a stone
Done
to
it.
like, and then timer and quick hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, self timer on a phone is a lifesaver. Honestly,
How
10 seconds and then you run into position.
flick hair, burst. So that I actually didn't know you'd done that completely solo. I thought, wow, and you've only been riding 4 years. Yeah. So how long into your bike journey was it until you did that?
So actually, Scotland was only last year. I only did it last year, right. And I was very. I did sort of the majority of it by myself. I met a fellow biker who was really, really, really kind to meet me in I think it was just outside. It was either Perth, and then we rode up to Inverness together, because I was moaning when I was going up there on the motorway about the state of my helmet. I have two helmets. I have a Shoei X-Spirit 3 and I have an AGV Corsa R. And I'd actually done a track day at Snetterton the day before I travelled up to Scotland, which I do not recommend, by the way. I was exhausted. But I took the AGV because I was going on track with it. But up the motorway, it is so loud. The wind noise is so loud. And I didn't have any earplugs, and I was really, really struggling. And I just thought, if I have to buy another helmet somewhere in Scotland, then actually I would, because I can't deal with the noise of the wind. And so a fellow biker actually sort of saw something that I put on my Instagram and met me in Perth and gave me a load of earplugs and then rode with me up to Inverness, which was so kind of him. I was so grateful, and kind of stopped and took a few pictures with the Welcome to the Highlands sign, etc. And then So I did the whole route solo, and then when I got to the end of it, I stayed in Oban for a couple of nights, and there was another lady that I'd met through Instagram who has a BMW S1K, and she rode up from where she lived just outside of Glasgow to come and see me for the afternoon, and we sort of sat and had a coffee and etc. and spoke about bikes, and then I came back obviously by myself
really
back to
lovely.
London. So it was a brilliant experience. It was incredible, and I'm so glad that I did it, because there are a lot of things that could put you off, thinking about what could go wrong, thinking about, I'm doing this alone, I'm not going to be able to kind of share my experience with anyone because I'm by myself. And don't get me wrong, there were times during the trip when I thought, it would actually be really nice to be here with somebody and experience this with someone. But then I'd kind of think, but the fact that I'm doing it by myself and I'm giving that experience to myself, it, like I said earlier, it was just really empowering.
There is something about that, because when I did Costa Rica, there was that sense of, I was stood outside a volcano and it was active and it just gone off.
Incredible. Wow.
I was just like, I remember stood there being very emotional.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And just looking out at the scenery and thinking, wow, I'm doing this alone. I wish there was someone to share this with. My mum, funnily enough, I had no signal out there, so I couldn't do any FaceTime or anything. And almost I didn't want to.
Yes.
It was almost a very moving moment where I realised at that moment I was all I had. Yeah. I was my best friend.
That's exactly it.
And it gets me emotional now even thinking about that.
Same. I actually ended up pulling into they have like little passing places because the roads are so narrow, and I pulled into a passing place and I just sobbed in my helmet. I didn't even have time to take my helmet off. I was just overcome with emotion, and it was exactly that. I can do this. It was, as I said before as well, I sort of suffered from a lot of confidence issues, and the fact that I was there and then I had the balls to do it by myself, I was just weeping for about sort of a couple of minutes, and then I thought, right, okay, let's go and find some food.
It's strange, isn't it? It's because I turned to bikes at an emotional time for me, so I'd come out a very interesting period of my life, and I hadn't realised I had confidence issues. So even to this day, I come across very together, very confident, but even though I'm a model and that was my line of work, I always found if someone else put a camera on me, it was always the peace fingers that come up, the smile, the covering of the face.
Absolutely.
For years in school, a lot of pictures were with me with a bandana around my face because I was very self-conscious. And when I decided that to go to Costa Rica was literally at the end of a lot of things for me and the beginning and ends of a lot of other things. And when I was out there, I also turned to deciding I really wanted to do biking. And turning up to your CBT, everything that you do is completely alone.
Yes.
When you're on your bike, no matter if you're riding with friends or not, you are completely alone. The decisions you make are completely for yourself. And there is a very emotional thing about that. And I feel that even with yourself, you're emotionally driven in a sense that is very empowering because you've done this, it's incredible for a woman to, for anybody, and not even just a woman, for anybody to decide, I'm going to go do this alone. It's hard enough to go and eat on your own.
Right, yeah.
Let alone, sitting on your own at lunch. All of these things we're taught are not normal.
Yes.
And isolation feelings.
You shouldn't really do them, yeah.
Because you've also done track. So what did you do first? You came, you learnt riding, you got your full license.
Yep.
And what made you decide, I'm going to do track, I'm going to go and do all this stuff that not every biker does?
Yeah.
Not every biker turns to. What made you decide, as somebody that, self for themselves says they've got confidence issues, you've pushed yourself massively.
Definitely. And I've never really had a problem with kind of pushing myself in what I do. It's more kind of, I think for me, my confidence was very like kind of visual orientated. I've always had a problem with sort of various things about how I look, and I think that's a lot of people have their insecurities, but mine have been very, very at a forefront and have kind of sometimes stopped me from doing things. But with this, I thought, I've got my helmet on, no one can see me. I'm just going to push myself. And I mean, in terms of track, in terms of touring, it very much came from the people that I was surrounded by. I'm very, very lucky to have a group of close friends who I have to this day who ride on track a lot. They're a mixture of guys and girls, and they were so encouraging. And, you know, I just kept hearing all these things about you really, really get to know your bike on track. You know, you take your mirrors off, you tape your speedo, and you feel the bike. You connect with it in a way like you don't do on the road, because you're constantly looking out for hazards, you know, and things that could potentially go wrong. Whereas on track, it's you, the tarmac, and the bike. You know, you take your mirrors off, so you don't see what everyone's doing behind you. You don't have that awareness. It's just total focus. And I just thought, I really want to do that. You know, on my new bike, on my 09, I'd only had it it was less than a year, I think, before I did my first track day, and that was at Donington. And I was just buzzing. I was buzzing because I'd ridden the bike in a way that I hadn't had an opportunity to ride it. You know, there's no speed limits, there's no people trying to cross the road, there's no cars trying to turn into you at junctions. Was
it terrifying though?
I was so scared. I remember being in, and I actually went with two of my girlfriends, and all three of us were sat in the van, and both of us were sort of shaking like a leaf, and we thought, how are we going to do it?
I think about it.
Yeah, we were exactly the same. We were sort of thinking, how on earth are we actually going to operate a machine? Because I'm so nervous, I can hardly walk. But literally, you do your first session and you come in, and I'm telling you, I was so buzzing. It's just the most amazing feeling.
Having such a vast family almost of Slow Boys team, what does that do to you? Do you like find that it's overwhelming at times, or do you find that it adds something to your life in a different way? Like, how would you describe that?
I probably wouldn't say overwhelming. I'd say that it's been very interesting meeting people from I guess sort of e-meeting, people from all over the world. I mean, you know, I've got to speak to people in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and Germany, who I perhaps, you know, wouldn't have ever come into contact with because we're totally in a different location. So I think it's more that it's more the kind of that I've just got to meet and come into contact with so many people, and I don't think I would have done that without being part of Slow Boys, which I'm very, very grateful for. But I wouldn't say I was kind of overwhelmed with it, but most definitely kind of it's just a really, really nice way of being part of a community and meeting a much larger community than I would have sort of ever been involved in.
You've pretty much gone from, so would you say you were from novice to full rider in about 4 years?
I wouldn't say I was a full rider. No, absolutely not.
So how would you describe what your journey's been?
I'd say that I was perhaps like I'm a fairly experienced rider, you know, having ridden gravelly roads in Scotland, track day, commuting through London.
More than a lot of people
yeah. But you know, there are some people that I know in the way that they handle a bike on the road. I don't know if I could ever be able to kind of handle a bike like that. So in terms of like being a full rider, that's what I mean in terms of that.
I think what would be interesting to know is how because you've transformed from what I've heard and what I've scouted on I'm like a little stalker, aren't I, there, just going through people's feeds. But from what I've seen and what I've read, you've transformed so much in the space of like 4 years.
Yes.
What would be your goal? What is your vision? Is there a vision for what you aspired to be in the bike world? Is it even just in the bike world? What is that vision of you in like 5 years time? What is that journey like?
I think for me, I see people like Ruby, for example, Ruby's page, and we were talking about this the other day together when we did our bike swap.
That was fun. No,
you didn't hear my stomach. Okay, fine. Sorry.
It's been a long day. That looked really fun.
It was such a good laugh. But the way that she is able to come across, I think she's always been very genuine to herself. You know, she always, you know, she sort of uploads pictures that are perhaps, you know, sort of jokey pictures instead of just, you know, the ideal, what you know, want to look like and what you want to present yourself. And I just feel that she's quite genuine in the way that she interacts with brands and, you know, has grown her social media, etc. So, you know, ultimately I would like to go sort of in that vein, but still being very genuine to myself and what I enjoy. And I enjoy the touring. I enjoy going on track. I enjoy going for social rides with my friends, and just kind of growing on that, and hopefully kind of, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't say I want to be kind of an inspiration to anybody, but if that can help, perhaps a new rider who is looking for someone to, I don't know, be able to advise them or be able to kind of do something that they perhaps wouldn't think about doing themselves, and the fact that I've done it, they kind of think, actually, perhaps I can do that. I'd like to be that.
There's a massive part of that. Me being as new as I am, and I came across Ruby, I've come across yourself, I've come across Sean, and I never ever thought I would even, I never thought of bike groups. I never thought of touring on my own. I never thought of all of those different aspects of, how vast this industry is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that because you dabble in quite a few, it is quite inspirational to feel like, what, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, that could be me. Could be me next week if I'm driven enough to do that.
Yeah.
But to know that there's, biking doesn't just mean being on a track.
No.
It doesn't mean just riding around with groups.
No, it's not two-dimensional. There's so many, and there is so much of it that I don't do. I mean, there's a huge kind of stunt community who do the most amazing things with their bikes. They just kind of throw them around like they're, they're
so
sort of no weights whatsoever.
I
and I think, oh my God, I mean, everyone says to me, oh, you've got a super tute, you must be wheeling that thing up and down everywhere. And it's like, actually, I've got anti-wheelie on. Like, I'm not ready for that yet. There's a whole. Notice I slipped that in there.
Next week she's just Duke of Blonde on her Duke wheeling everywhere.
one wheel Duke. But there's so much that even I haven't been a part of yet. Like the kind of the off-road biking, like enduro, trials biking, MX, etc. Gosh, I would love to do that. That's something that now that I would also like to do. To add to my sort of overall biking experience, but there are so many people that do that, and it looks amazing fun. And
have you got much in the pipeline ahead of you in terms of expansion in your bike world?
Only really, I'd love to try off-roading. Really, I'd really want to, and luckily I have a few friends that kind of do it, so I'm hoping that maybe one day I can kind of wangle onto one of their days out.
You're going to be multifaceted in the bike world.
Yeah,
it's just, having spoken to yourself, seeing how incredibly vast it makes you realize, and it kind of humbles you on how much you can do. There's the explored road, and then there's the unexplored.
Absolutely.
And it's true, like I didn't even think of stunt riding when I'm in this conversation, but having said that, you're taught that biking's dangerous, you have to be careful, but then you look at the stunt riders and you're just like, okay, that's not what we were taught to do.
No.
That's completely against my human instincts of survival.
Yeah. But it takes so much control of the machine
and
that you have, and
trust.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible. And I mean, I look at pictures and people who sort of do it all the time. I mean, my Saturday involves potentially going out with a few friends, going to get breakfast, taking some nice country routes, and their Saturday is, doing kind of endos and stoppies and wheelies everywhere, and it's like, wow, I would love to do that at some point.
It's finding different areas, because I've always loved exploration, and exploring myself is a massive thing.
Yes.
Exploring where I'm comfortable and seeing how far I can push that to find areas of myself that I would never have explored before. I'm a Muslim girl background. Grown up, taught, get a husband, have kids, and settle down. And then I'm there now on a motorbike, and I'm thinking, wow, call me the cool auntie. Like,
yes, I am totally, I'm there with you.
That's my life. And it was because I was like, okay, I was doing things the way that society and my culture and my religion had taught me. I always said to everyone, I want to be like my mum growing up. It's because I didn't see any more role models in mainstream media or life. And social media has opened so many doors.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also allowed me to get rid of a narrative of even associating myself with just being a brown girl. And looking at how much more dimension there is to grow. Meeting people like yourself is inspirational, especially people that are starting the journey, or people that are bored in the journey, like people that are saying, there's more to this than meets the eye, and you just like you're saying you're very organised, but you're so spontaneous. And
yeah, it's a weird kind of dichotomy there of sort of two totally different people.
I like to be organised. I'm going to Wales tomorrow, and I don't need a hotel.
But I'll sort of plan it a bit, but I'll make the decision with like, I don't know, 3 days to go or something.
I think I can be kind of like that because I've done a lot of. My mum has brought me up to be very spontaneous. If anyone knows my mother, they know she's absolutely mental.
Yes, I'd say that my mother was quite similar.
It
spontaneous wise.
I've put a few things and she's like revving my bike, and she had no care that the neighbours were there or
brilliant
nothing, and I'm there thinking shh, but like I'm learning to control myself because she would do silly things like say to my brother, Bilal, Salia, come upstairs, guess what? And I'd be like, what? She goes, we're going to New York next week, and I'd be like, what are you serious?
Yeah.
And it was kind of that strength and her inspiration, even though we grew up very strict. And she was like, just go and do what you believe you couldn't do.
Yes, yeah. My mum was the same, very, very, very similar. And we grew up, I mean, my dad has always worked abroad. So we grew up with my mum. I have 2 younger brothers. And she was incredibly, keen to not restrict us in any way. If you wanted to do something, okay, let's try and do it. If you wanted to I don't know, experience something or try something new or whatever, she was very, very encouraging for that. And I think that's helped me in my bike journey, sort of not have any limits of what I thought that I could do. Would you say that played
a massive role? Was the support you had played a massive role?
Absolutely.
in your...
Absolutely. Not that she's sort of a massive fan that I've now got a huge motorcycle.
What have I created?
What are you doing? But, I mean, of course she worries. She's your mum, isn't it? But she's still very encouraging.
My mum, she's told me now. So my mum has gone to many speed awareness courses, and she's probably going to kill me for saying this. But there's many stories of my mum. My brother's friends pulled up in the car next to her, and they were waving at her, and she thought they went to race.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
she raced them, and then my brother got a phone call, came down the stairs, and said, "Mum, did you just race my friends down the road?" So I've learned a lot from her of being like, kind of like that. But now she didn't want me to get a bike. Mm-hmm. She wasn't for it for a little while. Mm-hmm. But then she said, you've got to live your life and you've got to live with no regrets. Mm-hmm. So you do you. Yeah. And now she's told me she's getting a bike.
Really? Oh, that's brilliant.
And I'm there
that's
like...
so exciting.
I'm mummy dearest now.
Yes,
saying, no,
careful,
you have to
please.
ride around me only, and you have to ride with me only.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I've been trying to get my mum on the back, but she hasn't. she hasn't taken that up yet. Although I had a phone call from my dad when I got the Super Duke, and he said, have you ever taken a pillion? And I said, yes. Why? And he said, do you think I can go on the back? And I thought, yes, Dad. Yes, you can.
Oh, that's amazing.
Let's do it.
It's amazing to feel that your family, when they get involved and they support your decisions and they support your journey, you just think, wow.
Yeah,
because I've always said, sometimes to go against the grain is what the family needs, and it's what your friends need. And they need you to show them that love exists and support exists in whatever direction you choose.
Yeah.
If you're honest and you're open and, you let them in on that journey, they love you more for it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think it's the inclusion of your friends.
And that they can see that it's truly making you happy, right?
Yeah.
And then I think that's the best thing that they can do for you and also to themselves to expand.
You exude, like, I know you say you're very conscious, but like when I met you, I'm such one of those girls that saps over other girls, aren't I? I literally was in awe because you guys have such a good energy. And I came back from that day with my business partner, with Shaz. I'm going to say Shaz now because I'm always referring to my business partner. But with Shaz, I came back and I was very emotional because I said I kind of feel free but with belonging. And supported and genuinely supported. I don't have anything to offer these people that no one else could offer them. They just are there to talk to me for me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel, because I always felt I had to prove with friends, everything, that I had to offer them something that they would be my friend. My poor brother used to nick a load of his stuff to give to my other friends to buy their friendship. Because I would be like, I have things I can offer you.
Yeah.
And I've got to a place in life where, with Ruby and with Sean and yourself and a few of the other people I've been exposed to, I realised it's a community, it's a support, it's an adventure.
Absolutely. It's the people around you that make you feel your most comfortable self. I mean, you know, with Ruby, with Sean, with a few of the girls, you know, that I've met kind of through biking, you can just be yourself, and they understand that side of you that is like, you know, bike obsessed pretty much, and you hear an exhaust go past and all of you are kind of, you know, sort of listening to it, but it's the people.
It's magical because there's a magic behind it. There's a adrenaline that you can't feel through the social media that much. You can't feel it. You see it and you're like, oh, I want to be involved, but there's a fear behind it. But when you're there, you could be like, I'm on a scooter, I'm on a 125, I'm on a this, I'm on a that. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
To feel that is really amazing because, you know, I was there with my tiniest of all bikes with you guys, and you've got these gorgeous, big, bulky, powerful bikes, and I'm thinking there's no difference. I didn't feel a difference today.
No, there isn't.
And I suppose that's what this conversation has been like, lifting the veil behind Slow Boys of what the people are like behind the, I'd say the machine, but it doesn't even feel like a machine, behind it's like an organism. Yeah. There's so much. So my accent might go in and out of being Yorkshire suddenly. I don't know why.
That happens with me as well. I grew up in North Yorkshire,
and I'm like, so much. Wait, hang on a second. Back to Cambridge. Yeah. It's been a long day, hasn't it? So we're just waffling on about going back to Yorkshire now. But no, I think, you know, standing my ground with family, and then seeing that there's so many strong women and men that, you know, treat you on a level playing field, and it's about fun and games. I almost feel like I am a child again, and I'm with my brothers and sisters. I didn't have any sisters, but with my brother again, hanging around like school, having fun. Yeah. There's none of that.
That's what it is at the end of the day. Like, if you're not having fun in whatever hobby you have, you know, for me, whether it's in dance or jiu-jitsu or biking or whatever, if you're not having fun and enjoying it, then what is the point? Yeah. You know, what's the point? It's not cheap being a biker.
No, it's really not.
So if I'm spending all this money and actually at the end of the day I'm miserable and I'm not enjoying hanging around with the people that I'm hanging around with, then
it's getting rid of that seriousness, though, isn't it? So I realised that I can take things very seriously, because sometimes when you battle to get somewhere, you can start taking things seriously. Yes. You start to become really self-righteous, and you lose your spark. But I feel that, because I was like, the people be like, biking, you have to take it seriously. It's not all fun and games. And yeah, they're right to a degree when it comes to your safety. Yeah. But the community is fun and games.
Absolutely.
Getting out there, exploring is fun and games.
Yeah.
It's, you know, learning not to be reckless, and, you know, finding community around you, finding friendships around you that, you know, spur you on and make you feel like like there's a fire that's been lit inside you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because, you know, I said that after our first meeting, I came home and just decided I needed to walk around looking for bike magazines, because I asked Ruby, how did you learn? And she said, bike magazines. Yeah. What I've learned from you is, you know, go out there on your own and don't be afraid of the journey ahead.
Totally.
Also do what fits right for you. Yeah. And almost to come from a non-image it's so funny, because I feel like I'm such a contradiction in that sense. So my social media is very image focused at times, but I also don't always feel the most confident. My poor Shaz and my partner always know I'm like, oh my god, that is the weirdest angle of me.
Well, same. Like today I was like, what's my hair doing? It's awful.
And then I read a lot of books and I read a lot of things, and I always say, you know what, no one cares as much as you care about yourself. And, you know, what I see is certainly no one's going to pay as much attention to me than I am. Yeah. So I always like to, so my whole image of the modelling side of things was to break the stereotype of you have to look a certain way to be loved, because I had a massive family and I only have my mum left now. So I was like, I'm going to push that even further. All my family were into cars, bikes, but they did it under a veil of it's not a job, it's not a career path. And I was like, you know what, I really enjoy it. Yeah. I want to have fun in my day-to-day life. Yeah. If it means I work really hard at it, fine, but I want this to be a career.
Absolutely. And why shouldn't it be? If you're prepared to put the work in,
exactly,
and you enjoy it at the same time, then why shouldn't it be?
And then to find people like yourselves, Sean, that have created almost a home and a family, especially for people like me that I'd say I've created my family. I choose the people to have around me now, considering I have my family is all dispersed. So I've got my mother, I've got my best friend, and I've got my partner, and I feel like my family is growing because even though I would keep Ruby at arm's length with how I would speak to her, at times I just felt myself gravitating towards her.
Yeah.
And my friends would be laughing, like, "Oh, you talking to your best friend again?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's okay." He's like, "Oh yeah, you messaged me someone?" "Oh yeah," because I'm quite closed. I'm quite hidden in myself. But I found being in biking has actually made me more open.
Yes, same, totally.
And less image conscious, but more passion focused.
Yes, yeah, totally agree.
And it's a weird sense of confidence.
Yeah,
that I've really enjoyed, and I'd say I've flourished in being more human and just being ready for what's ahead.
Totally.
It's
and kind of having a better understanding of yourself and your limits as well, I think. I mean, certainly in terms of biking just in general, I mean, we've said, before, there is only you on the bike. You are in charge of your decisions. You know how fast you can put the throttle. You know what your corner experience is. If something wrong happens, there's nobody else with you. There's no one in the car with you. There's nobody, whatever. You have to take that decision upon yourself. And actually, there were times before I started biking where my sort of general confidence and my sort of feeling in myself and my life or whatever, I didn't feel able to make decisions like that.
It translates. It certainly translates from one thing to the other.
Absolutely, yeah.
What would you say is the biggest? Okay, I'm gonna go into this. There seems to be a trend now in all my conversations. But what would you say is the scariest thing to ever happen to you in the biking world?
Oh goodness. The scariest thing. Probably that first track day, actually. Really? I've never felt fear like it. Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of accidents on the bike. Okay. I was hit on my 125. I broke my wrist, and I also was in an accident on my 09 when I literally first got it, which was actually quite bad. But luckily, I wasn't kind of hurt at all. They're kind of instantaneous, right? It just kind of happens and you don't really realise it. You don't get to feel the fear. But definitely sort of driving on the track up to Donington, I was...
prolonged fear, isn't it? It's anticipation fear.
Anxiety sweats, like everything. I was so nervous. But, I don't know. I haven't really felt kind of really, 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 really scared at any kind of point during this journey. Of course, I mean, when you're on a new bike and you're sort of experiencing the power and stuff like that, then yes, there is fear there as well. And I think if your bike doesn't scare you a little bit, then I well, in my opinion, I think it should. Yeah, perhaps you're not kind of pushing yourself enough, or whatever you want to do it. But in terms of actual fear. It was probably that first track day.
I'm so excited. So I really want to do a track day, and I'm so excited to do one. And I remember when I stood, because I went to Silverstone to watch the Ducati track day, and I stood there and I was very much like, oh my god, bikes, they're doing things with their bikes. Oh my god,
so
bikes.
Good. Yeah.
Oh my god, how are they doing this? And then when you'd see them parachute themselves and bring themselves on, I was just like, techniques. I want to learn it all. But it's. I can imagine if I was there, I'd be a mess. I'd be such a mess.
Yeah.
If I was, I'd be like...
literally, I think I said earlier, we were sort of sat in the van thinking, how on earth are we going to actually handle this machine when we can hardly walk without fear? But
I think there's a video of me somewhere of me riding my first 600, and then the fear, I couldn't sleep the night before when I knew I was going to be riding it around. Mm-hmm. And then when I got it, I was like, again.
Yeah, exactly. I want to do it again. It was so much fun.
What would you say is the most you've learned from the biking world?
I think it's been within myself, like what I've learned about myself and what I can handle and what I can do. I can do pretty, I can do anything I want pretty much. And, sometimes that in itself is actually a little bit scary when you think about it, because you're like, because that part of you that perhaps is still a little bit shy or a bit unconfident, you have a lot of self-doubt. But, in terms of learning about myself, this whole biking journey has just been, it's opened so many doors, and realised that I actually can do that, and I enjoy doing that, and I'm going to do that. It gives you that kind of confidence that you would never think that you could have, being a fairly unconfident person.
And finally, one piece of advice you would give your younger self and the younger version of you, that the person that's just starting up, the person that's just beginning this journey.
In terms of the biking journey?
Yeah. In general, actually. In general, yeah.
I think just never be scared of taking the opportunity when it arises, because I'm a big believer in everything happens at the right time. And I think, looking back, there are probably a couple of times where I could have started this whole kind of biking journey a bit earlier than I did, but I was always a bit nervous about taking that step. And I think if it feels right and the opportunity is there, then you should do it, because there is literally nothing stopping you apart from that little, piece of self-doubt in your head. That's probably it.
I feel like I've learned literally so much from you. I'm sat here, I'm slouched in my chair, everything. I just feel like I'm just chatting with a friend. I feel like I've learned so much over the past few weeks and days, and even knowing yourself, and only a week.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I feel like I've learned so bloody much, and I feel very excited. I think this is a great opportunity, and I'm so grateful that you came all this way and did.
I'm really grateful to be invited onto here.
Getting
so
all
thank
sappy,
you.
Yeah, I know.
Crying.
Thank you. No, honestly, I'm gonna actually have to have you back, because there's so much. I realise I'm gonna go away. I'm gonna be thinking of so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
But if anyone has anything to say, they can. Are you open to reaching out on your social medias?
Absolutely, yeah. Feel free to, if there are any sort of particular questions about Slow Boys, I'll be happy to answer what I can. It's probably, some questions Sean is probably best to answer, because he's been the driving force behind it for so many years, but certainly in terms of my experience and my involvement, absolutely, drop me a message on Instagram, and we can go from there at Duke of Blonde.
I'll make sure that's on there as well. But no, it's been magnificent to have you on. I feel it's been a very emotional but great talk. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into another episode of Ride of Your Life. And it certainly has been the ride of my life going through all of this. I cannot wait for the next one. And it's been amazing to have you. So
thank you.
Like, share, subscribe. If you've got any questions, please let us know. And if you'd like to see anything or even see Lillie again, definitely let us know. And thank you guys so much for tuning in and supporting us and making this happen as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Speak soon.
See you.